So yes, so my background is I work for the Department of Communities and Local Government. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor and Muslim Lead on engagement. I wasn't always a civil servant. My career with the civil service has started only recently, a year and a half ago. But I come from a background of working in over the last 5 years on international development. But prior to that, working with local authorities on all sorts of areas of engagement. And one of the things that I thought that was really interesting, I'd like to share with you as an anecdote, is my first interaction in engagement. A long time ago, something like 20 years ago, I'm showing my age now, but I was heading up a regeneration agency in the north, somewhere in the northwest. And there was a large Muslim population here, a large Muslim community over here, and I went in to speak to the councillors of this local authority about the engagement process. And one of the things that I said that I thought was really, really important is that engagement needs to be all-inclusive. You know, so I drew up this massive plan. I said we're going to be engaging with women, we're going to be engaging with young people, we're going to be engaging on the basis of generational issues, on a whole host of things, and different ethnicities, etc., etc. And I had a blank look across the table coming towards me, because the councillors had pivotally and historically only engaged with the community leaders, and there lies the problem. In terms of engagement, I believe it needs to be wholesome. It needs to be really, really deeply rooted in understanding communities. And it can't be a lip service exercise. It just can't be. So when I came into government, one of the things that I found really interesting was actually self-reflection. One of the things that I thought that was important to recognise was that there was a degree of cynicism within Muslim communities, grounded in certain questions. Can I have the next slide, please? I mean, how do Muslim communities see engagement with government? Do they see it with suspicion? Do they see it as non-existent? It hasn't, they don't see it as something that they've been involved in. They've thought that only the usual suspects involve themselves in terms of engagement. Is it really for me? Does it really speak my language? Does it understand me in terms of my complexity? Or does it understand me as a monolith? As Muslims all being the same. So there's understandably issues. Is it representative of me? So, all these suspicions that exist, and what doesn't help, what hasn't helped government is really the role of the media. With media being the way it has been, and many of our communities have fallen foul to this. The way in which media portrays communities. What communities sometimes forget is that the media also portrays government in a certain way. So in a lot of instances, what has happened is that communities have seen what's in the Daily Mail and interpreted that as government policy. So it's there are complexities with regards to communication and connectivity between government and communities. And that's really the complexity and the terrain that we're dealing with when we're looking at engagement. So it's not easy, it's quite complex. And understanding that complexity, I think, is very, very important. But really, in terms of how we should be looking at government and its relationship with communities, needs to encounter a whole host of issues and complexities, as I've mentioned. Central to this is, how can we develop a harmonious relationship, in inverted commas, but a relationship that allows us to look at policy and develop policy and shape policy that is bringing out the best in communities. Whether that is looking at community empowerment or interfaith community relations, as Jonathan was talking about earlier on. So how can we play a part in terms of facilitating that? How can we ensure that our engagement is national? One of the things that I was quite critical about when before I came into the civil service was that I really considered that the way in which government policy worked was that it was engaging largely within a southern domain. So everything was London-centric, or even Westminster-centric. And I was quite concerned about this. I come from the north, and in the north, things are very different. I've been living here now for a year and a half, and I'm still convinced about this, that up in the north things are different. And they're very nice people up in the north. We have Manchester United as well, which are coming today to London. My footballing coming through there. Participation. How do we get good engagement, meaningful engagement, but engagement that goes beyond the gatekeepers? Engagement that goes beyond the gatekeepers and looks at creating gateways into communities, is far-reaching, is actually pervasive, and allows people to actually find engagement with government interesting. That's really, really important. And I've been going up and down the country over the last 8 months or so, speaking to communities, in community settings, talking to young people, talking to people of different ethnicities. Muslims, as we know, not a single ethnic group, looking at the diversity, looking at the complexity, looking at the ethnicity of individuals and seeing them as communities in terms of their identity and the complexity of that identity. Sexuality and Muslim communities, disability and Muslim communities. We can see then that the different schools of thought, this notion that one school of thought compared to another school of thought, we need to move beyond that. We need to understand that engaging with Muslim communities is engaging with them wholeheartedly. So meaningful and developing trust. Developing trust is not something that happens overnight. Developing trust happens through developing relationships. So, meaningful engagement, deeper engagement. But I think central to this is something that Jonathan mentioned earlier on, notions of values. And having values that we can all abide by is very, very important. Now, that doesn't mean that, and again, a lot of the times I come across communities saying, government has defined values. Well, the definition of values is really defined within humanity. And really, that's what we're talking about. And anybody who falls foul of that and dehumanizes people, well, they are people that fall beyond the pale in terms of values and values that we all upheld. And I think that goes across the board in all communities and within all faiths. So, meaningful engagement is really, really important, and understanding this complexity is central. It wouldn't be really right of me just to talk about faith engagement without talking a little bit more about what our department actually does in terms of faith engagement and how we see faith engagement. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So our engagement is really much focused around faith groups as far as DCLG is concerned. Now, that doesn't mean understanding faith groups in simple terms, but also, as I mentioned earlier on, going down the road of this complexity, trying to understand the issues that communities face up and down the country, north-south issues in different pockets of communities. We believe our department does act as an intermediary between faith groups and other government departments. A lot of other government departments do actually turn to us to try and guide them in terms of understanding the faith dynamics that exist in different parts of the UK, in England especially. And there are certain programs that we run that I think are quite interesting in terms of looking at how we engage directly with communities. One that's relatively new, Strengthening Faith Institutions, which is looking at faith organisations up and down the country and assisting them in their processes of development. And this is something that's actually been quite successful. We're quite intrigued by the way this has worked. So that's a really positive thing. Near Neighbours, many of you may have come across Near Neighbours. Near Neighbours is a programme that we've been developing that gets communities at grassroots level to talk to each other. So people from different faith backgrounds come together and talk to each other. Nisa Nashim, some of you here may have heard of Nisa Nashim, being run by Julie, who I met yesterday, and I think she is here today as well, and Mitzvah Day as well, and Sadaqah Day as well, actually, is another program that we truly support. And the Interfaith Network, which we see as a very, very important part of our engagement programme. As I said earlier on, we do work across different government departments. We also have advisory groups looking at anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred. And we work in terms of funding activity towards True Vision, the National Community Tensions Team, so we can understand hate crime. Hate crime is then rooted within two programs that we assist. That's Tau Mama and Remnant Srebrenica. So that's the sort of like the corporate understanding of what DCLG is all about. But as I mentioned earlier on, that the notion of engagement has to be rooted in a deeper understanding of communities. And that's something that we have to work on continuously. Thank you very much.